I love the look of luxury, but knowing that I got it at a great price. And I feel like you're like me too. And that's why I know you're going to love Quince. Quince is my go-to for luxury essentials at affordable prices. I get DMs all the time. Where did you get that sweater? I'm telling you, I got it at Quince. You know why? They offer high quality items at prices within reach. And the best part, all Quince items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. So they do this by partnering directly with top factories. So Quince cuts the cost of the middleman and then passes the savings on to us. And the best part, it only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. And who doesn't love that? In fact, the thing you need to get right now are the toasted almond silk pajamas. It's a beautiful gift for someone in your life or just for yourself. So give yourself the luxury you deserve with Quince. Go to quince.com/KKC for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/KKC to get your free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/KateCasey.
Don't miss Good American Family.
We have a little girl here for adoption. She has dwarfism.
Starring Ellen Pompeo and Mark Duplass.
Something is off.
She's just a little girl. You think she's faking?
She has adult teeth. There are signs of puberty.
Inspired by the shocking stories that tore a family apart.
I don't know what's going on.
How old are you?
You should get a lawyer.
You have no idea how those people hurt this girl.
The Hulu original series, Good American Family. New episodes Wednesdays, streaming on Hulu.
Welcome back for another episode of Reality Life with Kate Casey, and welcome back for this Saturday series episode. I've so enjoyed over 600 episodes every Saturday having an opportunity to discuss with a guest their most interesting personal story. Now, this week I put out in my Facebook group, do you have a family secret? And I was inundated with responses. And today's episode is about Brittany. Now, family secrets, the little bits of information kept hidden within a family, they can be enormously damaging. And most families keep secrets. It's just a matter of how large. Brittany Floyd was raised in Illinois by her grandparents, who were high school sweethearts from rural Illinois. They raised 2 children near Chicago. Their daughter Rhonda began to rebel in her teen years. She skipped 2 grades, but struggled socially with older classmates. She became pregnant at 17 and gave birth to a daughter, Brittany. She struggled with alcohol, and thus her parents became Brittany's caretakers. As an adult, she would develop a close relationship with her mother, and before her death from cancer, she would share that there were 2 additional siblings she had placed for adoption. The day of her mother's death would begin the unraveling of a very different picture of her mother Rhonda's life. There were 3 other children placed for adoption, making the total 5. In this episode, Brittany shares her story. And what I love most about this story is how layered it is. Rhonda had her first baby at age 17, and her daughter would learn after her death about the life that she led, which included helping 3 other couples expand their families. Here is my interview with Brittany. What a story. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on.
So let's start from the beginning. Tell everybody where you're from and about your family of origin.
Sure. I am from Illinois, central Illinois, so right smack dab in the middle. I was raised by my biological mother's parents. So technically my grandma and grandpa, but I was raised by them since birth. So I refer to them as mom and dad. And then my bio mom, I just call her by her first name. Growing up, it was pretty typical. I think the best way to kind of visualize the people that I'm talking about is, my mom and dad gave off to me vibes of like Clark and Ellen Griswold from the vacation movies, mixed with like my dad throwing a little bit of Tony Soprano in there. And my mom, I also describe her as, think of Steel Magnolias and take Daryl Hannah, Dolly Parton, and Sally Fields characters and put them into a pot. And that would be my mom. Pretty normal upbringing. But for the context of this story, they had 2 kids. So my bio mom, Rhonda, and then a son. And Rhonda, growing up, advanced 2 grades very early.
Wow.
And yeah, and later on, my mom kind of blames that for part of her issues of growing up too fast. But so whenever I came along, we were kind of raised like the mom and dad and three siblings, and I was just the baby. But Rhonda was in and out of the house at that point. She was 18, and then my brother was 14, 15. My dad, he worked at a power plant, and he would work nights, and then during the day he would build houses. And so we moved around quite a bit. And then my mom, she basically was a housewife. And then at some point started an in-home daycare, and that's where I was. And she was obsessed with soap operas. And so she would have these photo albums of the daycare kids, and it said all my children on it. But that was what she did. And, you know, he was the boss, and, you know, she took care of the house. And flash forward, we moved to Texas and then moved back to Illinois. And and whenever I was in sixth grade, she was diagnosed with lung cancer and then ended up passing away whenever I was in eighth grade. So at that point, it was just me and my dad. And here he is, you know, he went into a bit of depression, but was probably thinking, what the hell do I do with this teenage girl? Because I was 14. And that's where things kind of pick up with my bio mom. But again, flashing forward, I stayed in Illinois and went to college and ended up getting 3 degrees, and I work in higher ed now. And so everyone, once they hear the story of my bio mom and my bio dad, they're like, I do not know how you are like in a van down by the river. And it amazes me too. But yeah. And throughout all of this is then stories leading up to kind of the big secret that it's kind of revealed itself slowly but surely over time, which is that my bio mom, I thought that I was her only biological kid. And later on, again, it trickles out that she placed 5 children into adoption, same dad. So there's 5 siblings I have that have the same mom and dad and different ages. And they're scattered throughout the United States. And over time, as they're growing up and becoming adults, I'm starting to be contacted by all of them, which has left me kind of in a confusing place as to how to navigate this. So that's kind of a background.
So your biological father, what can you tell me about him?
I didn't have any contact with him ever whenever I was growing up. And oddly enough, it always surprises people that being raised by grandparents, you would think I would have these questions, you know, like, where is my bio dad? And for whatever reason, I don't know if it was I never felt that there was a void, but I was never even really curious about it. It was like, this is my life, this is my family. But I knew that he was still in Illinois, and slowly over time, and when I was becoming an adult, my bio mom would tell me a little bit more about his family. My parents, so again, grandparents, when I heard them very vaguely talking about him, the only takeaways I had was that he was a bit of a partier, rough lifestyle, and him and Rhonda kind of, you know, think late 80s and party hard. And that was basically all I knew. I had never even seen a picture. So I ended up finding out about them and being in contact with them mid to late 20s. But he's now since passed too. So
when you're growing up and you're cognizant, Rhonda is my biological mother, but this couple is absolutely my parents. For you, it was completely normal. When your friends came over for play dates, did you ever have to explain who Rhonda was?
Whenever I was younger, no, because Rhonda was never around. So it was just, this is my mom and dad. Here we are. But as I got older, I would say, you know, like 5th, 6th grade, my parents were quite a bit older than the typical parent. And so that was when my friends started to have questions, and where I almost had this insecurity about it because, again, my parents were older and they were more old school about things. And that was whenever it really started to come into conversation, and I would just explain it, whereas kind of how I did today. And then Yeah, it was just that we were raised like three siblings, basically. Bio mom, her brother, who I call my brother, and me. But yeah, it never seemed out of the ordinary to me. But when I would tell people or when I would meet people and start to tell my background, and I would be like, get a dry erase board, because every title that I call someone is not what they actually are.
Yeah.
And people would be like, oh boy, okay. And now since it's even grown further.
So your brother,
Yes.
did he ever have to explain to other people outside of your home, okay, this is our family dynamic? Or was it really just not an issue? Because I think boys process things so much differently than girls. Girls, I feel like internalize, and they like the big story, and our insecurities are different. Did you find there was a different situation with your brother?
A little bit. And I would say probably later in my teen years, I remember one time when my grandpa, had referred to me to someone as his granddaughter. And around that same time, my brother was getting married, and I was in the wedding party. And at first I was listed as niece. And that was hurtful to me, because that's just never how we were. But I can understand from my dad's perspective and my brother's perspective, it's just easier to lay it out as to what it really is. I think for my brother, the interesting dynamic is, when you think about before I was there, before I was even thought of, Rhonda started to go down quite a wild streak. And my brother was at home to witness all of it and the hell that she kind of put my mom and my dad through. And it was pretty traumatic for him. And I learned more and more the more we talk about it, like present day. But I think for him, it was weird because he biologically did have a sister, but for most of my life, they were completely estranged. So when he would say to his friends and family, I have a sister, they would be like, wait, what? I mean, if they didn't grow up with them, because she just wasn't around. Now, and I remember expressing to my dad and my brother at the time of like, you're my dad, you're my brother, I'm your daughter, I'm your sister. And that cleared that up. But I think now with my brother calling me his sister and his kids call me Aunt Brittany, whenever Rhonda got sick, I think it took some explanation from my brother and his wife to explain, oh, my sister's terminally ill, because his kids are probably like, what? You have another sister?
Right.
So I think he had his own challenges, but also with being older too, I think he just kind of found his own way to navigate that and explain it.
So she gets sick.
She got sick in 2021. So pretty recent.
Wow. Okay. When you find out that your mom's sick, how did you process that?
So, I guess going back, which will lead to that, in my teen years after my mom had passed away, and everything's kind of a blur for me. And after having a therapist for all these years, I think it was just me kind of disassociating through a traumatic experience. And so after a year of my mom passing away, Rhonda was still around. She was dating someone new. And my dad had gone out of state for a business trip. And while he was gone, me and a friend had asked Rhonda and her boyfriend at the time if they would buy us alcohol. I don't even remember how the conversation came to be. I had never drank before. We were freshmen. I'm sure it was like all the cool kids, like let's have our experience. Anywho, she supplied us with a bottle of Southern Comfort. It was just me and my friend staying the night at my house. And so, of course, my dad's gone. Rhonda doesn't live with us. I've never lived with her. So it's two 15-year-old girls with a bottle of Southern Comfort that don't know any better. It could have been Southern Comfort. It could have been a beer, but we drank it pretty quickly.
Oh,
and yeah, I was sick. I fell asleep. And this was back in like MSN Messenger days and like AOL Instant Messenger. But my friend stayed online and was chatting with people from our high school. She invited someone from our high school who was a couple years older over. I have no idea why. We were not friends with him. I had never talked to him. And I woke up in the middle of the night. I don't even know what time it was, but he was in the process of sexually assaulting me.
Oh, Brittany.
And that it was, it's all a blur. So again, it's like, I just lost my mom. I'm navigating living with my dad, who's this older man at this point, and navigating teenage years of like shopping and hair and makeup and
hormones.
And he's depressed. Yeah. And he is depressed and drinking every night, mourning his wife and, watching Bruce Springsteen in the E Street Band live DVD over and over. And I'm like, okay. So I'm already navigating this just odd but sad time. And then within a year, this sexual assault happens. And I couldn't finish my freshman year of high school because of the timing and then the injuries I sustained during that. My dad's out of state. My friends end up taking me to the hospital. Rhonda's nowhere to be found. I cannot get a hold of her. My friend dips out because, again, I was injured and she knew that things were about to hit the fan. Other friends and their parents took me to the hospital. My dad was already on the way home. That night, my dad picks me up, comes to the ER, and, they're doing the rape kit and the advocate is there and blah, blah, blah. And the only question he had was, who gave you this alcohol? And I said, Rhonda. And he said, where is it? And I said, it's in the trash. And the trash hadn't come yet. He leaves because he knew it was going to be a minute. And I later found out that he drove to our house, got that Southern Comfort bottle out of the trash, wrote a letter to Rhonda in it, put the letter in the bottle, and went and sat it on her porch. From that point on, I wasn't upset, again, at a 15-year-old brain, that she supplied me with alcohol and this bad thing happened. I felt like just kind of abandoned of like, why are you not checking to make sure I'm okay? Like, why aren't you? And so after that, me and her, we didn't really communicate. There was some spotty things here and there, but after that, there was one time that I remember seeing her in person, and that leads into the adoption stuff. But other than that, I did not see her for probably 15 years.
Well, do we know what your dad wrote in that letter? No, I don't. Again, going back to kind of like the Tony Soprano vibe, I'm sure it was pretty stern and and I ended up asking Rhonda at some point what it was. But it was a vague answer. It was what we could all assume of him being pretty upset. And me and him never talked about the assault again after that night, whenever he drove me home from the hospital. So it was kind of like that happened and we didn't discuss it. Things happen and you keep on moving. And so flash forward to, that was early 2000s, 2002, 2003. Flash forward 2015, 2016, my dad says, hey, I'm going to go pick Rhonda up for this long-term boyfriend. Same one from 2002. They broke up. She needs a place to stay and I'm going to go get her. And I'm like, oh boy, why would you do that? Like, your life is peaceful. You're retired. You have this little lake house. And what are you doing? Like, I just, at that point, was older and I'm just like, this is not a good idea. She's bad news bears. But he always was loyal to her. And he's like, that's my daughter. And he went and picked her up. Me and my brother were not happy about it. But over the course of the next years, from that time to 2021, when she was diagnosed with uterine cancer, me and her became best friends. Wow.
Oddly enough. Yeah. And it was like, her and I talked more than I talked to anyone. It was like, she was my sounding board for everything. And it amazed me. It amazed her. And then, she got sick. And from the day we found out and she was sick to the day she passed was 21 days.
Wow.
So very, very quick. And so during those 21 days, I really tried to ask her things that I would always want to know. For example, what did Dad write in the letter in the bottle?
There's so many things in life we just never get around to. Taking up that hobby, cleaning out the garage, the little things that don't really make huge differences in our lives. Yet, there's one thing that most of us have probably been neglecting that can have a huge impact on our family's future. It's life insurance. And with SelectQuote, getting covered with the right policy for you is easier and more affordable than you may think. SelectQuote is one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience, helping over 2 million customers find over $700 billion in coverage since 1985. If you have high blood pressure, no problem. If you have diabetes, that's fine too. And even if you have heart disease, SelectQuote partners with carriers that can cover those conditions and others. Head to SelectQuote.com and a licensed insurance agent will call you right away with the right policy for your life and your budget. SelectQuote, they shop and you save. So get the right life insurance for you for less at SelectQuote.com/realitylife. Go to SelectQuote.com/realitylife today and get started. That's SelectQuote.com/realitylife. Now, we both know that shopping for a rug can be challenging. You've either got insanely expensive handcrafted rugs or the mass-produced alternatives that won't hold up. But that's where Revival Rugs comes in. Revival's founders didn't want to spend thousands on a new rug, but they didn't want to settle for less either. Revival is a global company with teams in the U.S. as well as weaving regions in India, Turkey, and Morocco. Revival works with artisans to preserve rug-making traditions and pass on this value to you. Eliminating middlemen allows them to remove steep markups, giving you amazing value at incredible prices. And Revival's popular washable rugs have the look and feel of a real rug, so you don't have to sacrifice style for convenience. And my favorite, which I ordered, is the sweatshirt rug, and I also love the stripe rug. So spruce up your space with Revival Rugs. Visit revivalrugs.com/realitylife and use code KateCasey20 for 20% off your first order. That's revivalrugs.com/realitylife, code KateCasey20. One more time, revivalrugs.com/realitylife with code KateCasey20 to save 20%.
And at this point, I had known about one child she gave up for adoption.
Okay.
So I had asked her, I'm like, are there any more siblings out there? Considering I had not seen her for 15 years. And she told me about one. And I was okay.
What did she tell you?
She said that there was one baby that she had placed for adoption when she was with the boyfriend. And that the baby boy was adopted into a same-sex couple on the West Coast. They're amazing. That Rhonda and the boyfriend really I don't know if they lived with them, but lived very close because the dads, I'm sure, wanted to, be in the loop of what's going on with this woman who's about to give them a baby. And she had great things to say about them. And of course, then I'm like, I want to know who, what, when, where, how, because again, it's like, other than my brother, who's really my uncle, I was raised as an only child. I remember one of the few things I knew about Rhonda since I was little was that she couldn't have children. And, I'm 17, 18 at this point. And so it was just kind of shocking to me.
Who told you
other
that?
Than my parents, because I think she always had some medical issues. So with hemorrhaging and things like that. And I guess that's the thing to say too, is my parents did their best to shield me from what was going on with Rhonda. So things that I'm sharing today, it's like, it wasn't this linear path, and I'm sure it's already obvious, but even from her and my family, it was like partially, I feel like they were trying to protect me from things, but also too, it just seemed like everyone kind of had these little secrets of things that they knew within the family dynamic and things they didn't. And so, I don't even remember. I was so young. I want to say probably 5 or 6 that it was like, I knew in my mind, Rhonda can't have kids, and so it is just all a blur. But so at that point I knew of 2, and I know that maybe I didn't probably clearly communicate that again timeline wise, but yeah.
So what do you know of the brother? The one that was that a true story that he had been adopted by a same-sex couple?
Yes. Yes. And I didn't know much. I knew his first name. I had seen pictures, like some that she had shared with me, but they were all from when he was super young, toddler. And mathematically, I'm like, okay, he has to be close to a teenager at this point, I would assume. And so I just kept trying for more information so that I could try to figure things out on my own. But trying to talk with her about this was difficult because it would start with like, Brittany, just stop asking me questions. Like, I don't want to talk about it. Or she would change the subject and then I would bring it back up. And depending on her mood, sometimes she would be like, I don't like talking about this. And then other times, once I knew, she, would talk about her worries and her fears. And, what if he reached out to her? How would she navigate that? And, she was looking to me for answers. And I'm like, I have no idea. I'm trying to process that this even is a thing. Right before she got sick, I found out about that boy. And again, it's a blur because she was sick for such a little time period. But I had found out about him a little bit earlier, once we're kind of rebuilding our friendship. She gets sick for the 3 weeks. I ask her, are there any more? And that's when she said one more, that boy had a brother. And actually, too, it's confusing, but I think I had done some online creeping and found the dads and saw that they had pictures of their kids and they had 2 boys and they looked eerily similar. And then I went to her and I said, are there any more? And she's sick at this point. And she says, yes, there's one more. Yes, there's 2 boys with that same family. And I'm like, okay. And again, it's just, pass the butter, like next conversation. And I understand she felt uncomfortable and she expressed that she was worried about judgment and things like that. But I don't think she ever considered what it was like from my perspective to be learning these things. And I'm a full-fledged adult at this point. And so go back to the day she passed away at this point. And when she was sick too, I said, do you want me to tell those dads that you were so close with and that you're sick? Because they have a son and then 2 sons. And I don't want to rob them of that opportunity. And she said, no, don't let them know. So, okay, was like where I'm playing in my head. Do I go against her wishes and tell them? Because again, I'm thinking of the boys at this point. But I'm like, okay, I will respect her wishes. She passes away around 5:45 in the morning. Probably by 6:30, I contacted the dads and said, I know this is out of thin air. Please don't hate me that I'm telling you this now, but she passed away this morning. They were distraught and very sad. And as we're messaging back and forth, they say, have you told Callie's parents yet? And I think they said the names of her parents. And I'm like, who's that? And instantly, and this is literally within like an hour of me finding out that she had passed. And in hindsight, I wish I would have slowed down, but I was thinking about them. And so I said, who are they? And they said, oh, well, they're another family. It was another same-sex couple, also on the West Coast.
Okay.
And they say, well, that's her parents. Rhonda and her boyfriend had her and this family adopted her. And I'm sure at that point too, they were like, uh-oh, Brittany didn't know. And so I told them, and I'm like, in my mind, it was just a blur, like I'm devastated that she passed because at this point she's one of my best friends. But also too, now I'm having this feeling of, I thought that we were good and I thought we had an honest relationship. And I gave you an opportunity to tell me if there's anyone else out there. And now I find out within an hour of you passing that there was a whole other sibling out there. And I didn't know anything about her. I did not know anything at all. So I took that and kind of processed it. And to have that all happen in one day was a lot.
Had she lived in California where she met these couples?
But when I found out that she lived in several different states, and that's what's also confusing because we didn't have contact then. So I'm like, okay, she lived in Nevada, she lived in California, she lived in Alaska. Like, where in the world is Carmen Sandiego, basically? So I have no idea. I have no idea if that adoption was through an agency. I have no idea. And at this point, too, I'm starting to think she was in her late 30s. Like, she was probably my age-ish, like mid to late 30s. You haven't had a child in 18 years, but now all of a sudden, you have the first one, and now you have these other kids. Like, I just had kids. Like, is this on purpose? Are you getting something out of this? Like, is this an oopsie? I mean, at this point in your age, you know about birth control. So I just have those sorts of questions too. But yeah, I have no idea how these adoptions happened or how they were placed, how they linked up. Absolutely no clue.
And it's the same father for all of the kids.
Yes.
That is wild.
Yeah. And then, so she passed in October 2021. In 2022, my biological father passes away. And then in 2023, my dad, Rhonda's dad, he went into the hospital and passed away within the next day or two. That night after he passed, again, too, it's like, this is the one consistent figure that's been in my life. So at this point, I know my way around grief and death, but they all hit different. And at this point, I remember thinking, okay, I've lost 3 quote unquote parents in 3 years. And, what's next? And I remember laying down that night, just completely just exhausted and thinking, okay, me and my brother are lining up, what do we have to do, now that he's passed, like funeral, blah, blah, blah. I'm laying into bed and I check my work email because that's just how I am. And I had an email from a Gmail account and I open it and just something about it didn't seem like spam, and so I opened it and it said, hi, I found you from Rhonda's obituary, and me and my husband have a child that Rhonda placed into adoption, and he's turning 18 and he would love to get to know you. And you could hear like the record scratch. And I'm like, okay. Wow. So I'm like, what are the odds? The day she passes, I find out about a sibling. The day my dad passes, I find out about a sibling. And so it's just, again, it's all a blur. But I emailed them back. And they lived also, not Midwest, but, West Coast-ish. And so I started emailing back and forth with them and kind of sharing. They were sharing with me about their son. And the way they communicated with me was very gentle, and I appreciated it because, again, whirlwind. And I had my own personal things going on at the time too. But just like it's nothing, they share in that email that this baby was born and tested positive for cocaine.
Wow.
And that the baby had health issues and that required several surgeries throughout adolescence, but he's, seemingly doing pretty well now. And they had told me that this adoption happened in a a state that I didn't even know at the time that Rhonda had been with the same boyfriend, same father at that time when this would have added up. So they send me a picture and I'm like, they told me who the dad was and it was her boyfriend, but I had my doubts because I'm like, he never lived there with her. Well, unbeknownst to me, he had to have at some point because he is the dad. And again, this other sibling is a spitting image for the most part to the others. So
do they look like you?
Some do. The one who I was contacted from most recently, I would say and she's a girl. She looks the most similar to me, but they all look alike. They look like siblings and they're full blood siblings. And, so yeah, in total, I now know of 5 kids that were placed into adoption. Oldest would be the girl, I guess. And this is just with my own calculations, would be the girl. She's in college now. And then, I think next, so she's like about to be 19. Then there's the other boy who's 18. Then we have 17, et cetera, et cetera. And I think the youngest, I don't know, but I would assume, again, timeline wise, is probably early teens.
Okay.
So yeah, it's so complex because I try to think of it, again, with me being the age that I am now, I don't have kids of my own, but all of my friends are moms. And I try to understand how Rhonda did what she did and why, and what was the motivation. But also too, then I think of these kids and young adults, and I don't know statistically, but I would assume that it's probably pretty rare that 5 children,
I think so,
and that they don't know about each other. So when they contact me and they saw her obituary and I'm the only child listed.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, they probably don't assume that they have 4 other full blood siblings. And then I'm kind of faced with the confidentiality and privacy stuff too, because what if some of the adoptive parents don't want to tell their kids that yet,
Well, are the kids, most of them, still minors?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and the latest one, the girl that I mentioned, she would have technically been the first child placed into adoption, the only child that was put into a family that was, man and woman. And it was the only closed adoption.
Okay.
So I never even thought that I would be contacted by her or that it would be much later. And she contacted me. I had a message request on Facebook last week, and I wasn't even thinking that, and I click on it. And again, it's like, hey, I was born in, whatever, and I was placed for adoption and my biological mom's name is Rhonda, and I think you're my sibling. And I'm like, okay, all right, here we are. So, it's a lot to process. And again, there's so many secrets too throughout this story. Whenever I had messaged you, I was like, just prepare. There's so many layers to this onion, and there is. And I think that, again, why part of this is confusing in the timeline is that I think that Rhonda, I think who she was as a person was probably different depending on who she was talking to.
Maybe.
And I think over the years, maybe too, she forgot what she told me and she forgot what she didn't. And, like once you start lying, it's hard to keep up with the lie. And then throw in too of me finding out some of this stuff, throw in me processing my own traumas at the time and being in high school and kind of just having a, whatever, like I didn't think about adoptions and Rhonda and our relationship back in the moment like I do now. And it just seems like the more time that goes on, the more questions I have for her.
Yeah.
And I'll never get the answers, but it's wild.
Let's face it, weight loss can feel overwhelming. That's why Hers is changing the game. By providing access to GLP-1 medications plus expert care, they make your goals more achievable. Hers is transforming women's healthcare by providing access to affordable weight loss treatment plans delivered straight to your door if prescribed. Hers offers a holistic weight loss program with personalized solutions including compounded GLP-1 weekly injections featuring the same active ingredient as Ozempic and Wegovy or oral medication kits. So after submitting an online intake form, a licensed medical provider will determine what plan is best for you. And if prescribed, your program includes medication, ongoing care, and online support, and all at one cost. So if you've been struggling with your weight loss journey, it's time for you to find the best option that works for you through Hers. Start your initial free online visit today at forhers.com/KateCasey. That's FORHERS.com/KateCasey for your personalized weight loss treatment options. forhers.com/KateCasey. Hers weight loss is not available everywhere. Compounded products are not FDA approved or verified for safety, effectiveness, or quality. Prescription required. Restrictions apply. Wegovy and Ozempic are not compounded. Actual price depends on product and plan purchased.
Introducing Instagram teen accounts. A new way to keep your teen safer as they grow. Like making sure they always have their seatbelt on.
All right, sweetie pie, buckle up. Good job.
Or ring the bell on their bike.
Okay, kid, give it a try. Nice.
Or remember their elbow pads.
Knees too, okay? Yep. There you go.
New Instagram teen accounts. Automatic protections for who can contact your teen and the content they can see.
Well, I understand what people are saying in terms of like, it's a marvel that you are as centered and introspective as you are given the circumstances. I'm sad for the younger siblings that they will be able to have the same moments that you got with her. And I would imagine she just struggled with a lot of shame.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's hard because when something's done to you, it's hard to see humanity in the person that did it to you. But I feel like the older you get and the more you look at things in like a broad scope, it releases a little bit of the shame because you realize that everybody's born into different circumstances. They have different levels of strength and courage.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you had some time with her that you could have adult conversations, because
me too.
It's much different for somebody to process a complicated conversation when they're 12 versus as an adult. It strikes me too that you, in your work that you do, you work on investigating sexual assault in higher education.
Yeah.
And I wondered if in the quiet of the night, you sometimes think that you are healing other young women in a way that you couldn't be protected, that you're passing on to what someone couldn't give you in that moment when you were 15.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so too. And there's been a couple cases that I've worked on, one in particular where I felt like there were so many similarities with the aftermath that she went through and the bullying and people not believing her. And so her and I, even after the situation was resolved, if you will, her and I stayed in contact, and she would come in and check in with me, and I would check in with her. And I think through certain things that I had shared, and it was intentional a little bit, was to kind of let her know, like, I get it. Like, I'm not saying that I get it because, I have a degree in whatever, and I've done a few of these. Like, I really, truly get it. And it sometimes I'm like, what a full circle,
Yeah.
And even throughout my teen years, I went through a rebellious period, for quite a few years. And, for whatever reason and however, I pulled myself out of that. And so it amazes people that now here I am working in a position that's like, over disciplinary issues, with adolescents. So there's just so much I think that I can take from what I've experienced myself, with the sexual assault side and other things that, yeah, I think that my experience helps me relate. And I think that they can tell when they meet with me, that again, most of the things I've been there, done that, or I understand. But no, I think you bring up a good point of like the healing aspect, because I've kind of thought about it and wondered, but just maybe not worded like that, but it's more accurate than how I was thinking about it. But yeah, absolutely. And I think even just, when you're going through that, you're having to talk to state's attorneys and things like that. It's like, I know that body language, you don't have to say anything, but your body language or the way you put your pen down after you're getting the account of something, or, just a breathing heavy. It's like, I know that makes a victim or survivor, go back into the shell. So yeah, it is.
So true.
It's all the time. I'm like, the timing of things and the way that my life has kind of turned out is just, I don't even know how to describe it, but yeah.
Have you had interest in having a relationship with the younger siblings, or are you, since they're a lot younger than you, are you just sort of waiting it out to see what they're comfortable with?
I think, with everything that I've shared today, I think back to like a Real Housewives of New York moment when Ramona's talking about wanting to write a book, and Bethany tells her, like, if you're on this roller coaster, like, you don't write the book while you're still in it. You write the book after, it was like in the midst of her divorce and things like that. And Bethany's like, the book should come after you figured it out. I'm Ramona. So I am in the stages of working it out in my head and trying to figure out, what does this look like to me? I feel like just me as a person, I have like a caregiving nature, and I do like to understand the perspectives of other people. And there is this pressure of, part of me feels obligated, like whether I want to be involved or not, like I'm the only connection that they have to their biological mother's side. And it's kind of like their desire to have that and have some answers outweighs whether I want to do that or not, but I had talked with one of the dads of one of the children put into adoption. And when I found out about the one who was born with drug issues, I contacted the dad that I had communicated with on the West Coast. And I said, hey, I just, like, knee-jerk reaction was, I need to let them know there's another sibling out there. And he was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, I'm calling you. And I'm like, okay. And we had a really long conversation, and he, I say, is like an angel on earth. But the way he can talk to people is just so comforting. And he said something to me when we were talking about it. He said, Brittany, like, you have to understand, like, these adoptions and these childbirths, like, they weren't your decision. You didn't know about them. And so he's like, I don't want you to feel like you bear that burden, or however he said it, to be the link between all of these different children. If that's not what you want, he's like, if being that link and contacting them and having a relationship with them brings you joy, then that's excellent, and go for it. But if you find that it's, draining on you, or again, for lack of a better word, like if it's not letting you heal in your own ways and it's making things worse for you, don't feel that pressure. And it was nice to hear that from the adopted father, but, and that gave me some reassurance. But yeah, I'm like, I'm still figuring it out, and I'm still trying to navigate how I feel and what is right. And, it's like next steps.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, and again, too, the age difference. Like I'm technically, I would have been a teen mom with the oldest one, but I'm old enough to be all of these kids' moms. And I have to try to navigate too of just even the language that I use, like, what do they want to know? What's too much? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. But also remember, they can't process all of it at this young age. They do need some time.
Yeah.
And you're better with time. You're better with more answers and comfort the more time goes on. There are some people that are going to be listening to this right now and they have their own family secrets, or they've just found out they have siblings via 23andMe or Ancestry that they were unfamiliar with. It's a tall order to kind of unravel that. What is your advice for them?
Oh gosh. I would say what I've learned is like, don't jump into something right away. Like I had said, it was like a knee-jerk reaction of me to just instantly reach out before I even had time to really process it. So I would say, take it in, take a beat, figure out, what do I want to say? Is this something that I want to embark on? And I think too, I can think of all these different, TV shows and movies and things like that that's built around the subject of adoption. And usually it's the parents placing the child into adoption or the adoptive parents. But you don't hear much about the role of her, like that I'm in, of like other siblings, or, like, I don't even know what the technical term would be, but you just don't hear about it a lot. And I wish that there was, a how-to guide, but I understand that every situation's different. But I would just tell them there isn't a right or wrong answer. And you have to figure out, like the adopted dad told me, like, do what brings you joy and try to figure that out yourself. And that might be fluid over time. And I think that it's okay. And the great thing is with the adopted families that I've talked to, they have been the most like understanding, I couldn't have asked for a better situation, because they've all came and been like, you take your time. We know that this is a lot. And they've also expressed with me too, like, I'm not going to tell my child or children yet everything that you said. I want to process it with my husband, or, we want to kind of navigate what's right for our family and what's right for the kids. And, I think it isn't a one size fits all, but know that there are people out there. And if there is anyone listening that is in a similar boat to me, I would love to connect, because again, I'm still figuring this out and figuring out what I want my relationship to be. If I had to guess, I think that, I do want them to have a connection with their biological mother's side and know what our side is like, and have the pictures. And whenever she passed, I got all of her things, which weren't a lot, but she did have a huge tote that was full of like baby items. Like there was one where, again, I'm not a mother, but I swear there's like an infant diaper, and there's like, like the belly button, umbilical cord part. And like just so many things where I'm like, I had no idea. And pictures of her and the children's father. And so it's like, I want them to have that too, like I haven't had the bandwidth, I think, and willpower to go through it. So I realized what it was, saw the diaper and the umbilical cord, and I was like, okay, I'm going to set this aside. But yeah.
Well, I also hope that gives you a little bit of peace that certainly the idea of having to place your child for adoption is overwhelming for anybody who has had the privilege of being a parent. And I have such enormous respect for women that go through an entire pregnancy and then are able to do that. It's unthinkable to me what that must be like. But the fact that she left you this bag, or you found this bag and had baby items, I hope that you carry with it the realization that they were all meaningful to her. She just didn't have the resources or capabilities. And her last gift to you, I think, was to be as open with you as she was. And most people would never get that opportunity. And that you felt in those last days that you felt she was one of your best friends is really quite special, because she had you when she was 18 years old. And we think of ourselves as 18-year-olds and all the mistakes we made and the overwhelming responsibility of carrying a baby to term and then placing the child. And obviously there could have been postpartum with some of those pregnancies.
Oh, absolutely.
There could be lurking mental health stuff. There could be trauma. She answered a lot of your questions, but I'm sure there were many that were never even asked or even answered. So we don't know the full picture of Rhonda's life. But in the end, what a legacy to her that you are the person that you are, the work that you do in your career.
Absolutely. And I appreciate all of that. I truly do. And I think, too, as much as, Rhonda had a lot of regrets about decisions she made in her life. And, again, the closer that we got, the more I understood from just certain things she would say that it was a traumatic experience. And I talked with an adoption attorney that's a friend too. And she has been involved in probably thousands of adoptions. And I said, help me understand, and she gave me really valuable insight. And again, I had to take my own resentment and anger for Rhonda aside. And again, just look at it from a human standpoint. And when you pair those conversations with the box, with the conversations that Rhonda and I had, it was like, I knew that it was meaningful and I knew that it was traumatic for her. And I think that the beautiful thing about it, not only me and her, her leaving on such a high note with me and her, it was that she had a beautiful life at the end. She was with a different man who was amazing, and they had moved from the East Coast and lived 2 doors down from my dad. And they were buddies, and every day they spent together. And whenever she was sick, it was like I was there, her dad was there, and her brother that she had been estranged from for most of her life. They were able to have some really impactful and meaningful conversations. And it was like, I think everything that she had wanted, and it was just like that acceptance and love. I think she always feared of judgment more than probably we would have judged her. Mm-hmm. But just to see, it was tragic, but to see everything come together and it be positive, it was like, she said at the end that, she felt complete now. And I've come to terms with, she didn't tell me everything. And maybe I do have other siblings out there still. But she told me what she was comfortable with. And she knew me very well. And I think she knew that this time would come when I was contacted, and I think that she knew that I would handle it okay.
The gift that she gave those other families.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And knowing too from the contact that, with the 2 dads that were close with her and her boyfriend at the time, it was just hearing their experience with both of them was so touching. And they loved her. Whenever she passed, they posted such sweet tributes on social media. And it was just, it's like, she was a little bit of the family's black sheep, but I mean, she sure as hell left an impact on me. She left an impact on them. And again, at the end of the day, these families that have these kids, mm-hmm. from everything I can see, they're successful. they're healthy, they're happy. All of the parents are still together. It's like they've had as much of a golden little happy childhood, from what I can tell, that it's like she gave them gifts. And so again, it's like I have to look at it through that.
But I'm certain it wasn't easy, but I do think you're going to give a lot of people a big breath of relief that they're not alone in how they feel right now. Because I think because of the advent of 23andMe and these other DNA sites, that it opens a whole other conversation. And I'm so grateful you shared that with me. It just was a DM. And then I asked you to come on and share.
I appreciate you giving me, time on your platform to talk about this. And again, it's like, I hope that it does resonate with people. And also too, depending on whatever your role is, again, there's someone out there that's been in the same situation. And again, I'm happy to link up with anyone. And if anyone has tips, please let me know. I'm totally open. And, this is a complete learning experience for me. And I'm learning something new all the time. And I want to make sure that I approach this conversation with the gentleness and the care that everyone else has communicated with me. So open to any tips and suggestions.
So Brittany is in my Facebook group. So if you have questions for her, she will be there. I will make sure there's a post where you can connect with her. Thank you again.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I want to thank my wonderful guest, Brittany, and remind you to click subscribe, leave a 5-star review, join the Facebook group Reality Life with Kate Casey. You can get my What to Watch list at katecasey.substack.com. Bonus extra episodes by going to Patreon, patreon.com/Kate Casey. And follow me on social media. I'm on Instagram at @KatecaseyCA, TikTok, it's Kate Casey, and Twitter, Threads, and Blue Sky at Kate Casey. Check back for an all-new episode on Monday.
Hotels.com knows that planning your book club's annual field trip can get chaotic. Rhea, the romance reader, wants to stay in Prince Charming's castle. Self-improvement Steve needs a hotel gym. Leela and Jeff, the horror fans, ghosted the group chat about budget. And you've read enough true crime to know that murdering them isn't a real option. With the Hotels.com app, invite all your friends to collaborate and find the perfect hotel together. Share properties, vote on your favorites, and book all in one place. Find your perfect somewhere with Hotels.com.